with the transfer portal happening when it does, it's just very, very difficult to continue to prepare for the season you're in while you are also looking ahead to essentially team building for next year. And that's probably the big issue. We saw it a lot in college football. I want to say it was Marshall actually didn't even go to their bowl game because they legitimately didn't have enough bodies, or at least healthy bodies, to field a competitive team. And we also, I don't know, I think it might have been Scottie Pippen's son from Michigan. Unfortunately, he essentially had to go into the transfer portal before the Sweet 16 started, of course, when Michigan was competing in that. So a lot of the timing of things, and kind of the question I was posing to myself and Raider Jim, and hopefully we do get Raider Jim back, was kind of, if you were in charge, what would you do, or how do you think this can be remedied? Essentially without going back, because as much as I'm sure we all kind of whimsically look back on the days where transfers, or at least impact transfers, were pretty rare, or even lateral transfers. It was very rare to see a lateral transfer going from Duke to North Carolina, or, UCLA to Duke might be a better example there, or even Hunter Dickinson, Michigan to Kansas. You used to see a lot of going from a Power 5 school, dropping down maybe to a mid-major because, hey, you know what? Maybe my talent isn't built for this level, unfortunately. And now, again, we're seeing a lot more lateral movement. I personally, I understand, like, I know these things need to happen. I've been a proponent of paying the players. I've said multiple times, I'm a big believer in the free market. If someone is willing to pay you for your talents or services, you should be able to get paid. Obviously, if those services are legal and above board. And last time I checked, basketball is. So, and all sports are. So I'm not against that. And I don't think we are going to go back, nor should we. But a couple, little things I threw out there that I was jumping around in my brain if I was kind of king for a day, if you will, in the college basketball scene. Essentially, one of the main things, I don't know if it's possible, and I don't know if it's even, something that can be even accurately or honestly discussed, but I really truthfully believe that you have to get out from underneath the umbrella that is the National Collegiate Athletic Association, aka the NCAA, because the NCAA has been and is still against paying the players. And essentially they were forced by the courts to do it. The only problem is when that happened, the courts just assumed that everyone would therefore be working in good faith. And I personally do not think that that's happening, because the NCAA was making a lot of money, and then that money got cut. Now, they are now put in charge of relegating this, or regulating, I should say, this new system that is essentially costing them money. What is the reason for the NCAA to essentially say, yeah, you took the money from us. Now let's figure out a way to make this even worse for us financially. I think there was a lot, there wasn't a whole lot of looking beyond the original problem in the courts, and just assuming that the NCAA was going to be an altruistic entity in this, where the evidence is to the contrary. Let's just be honest. The NCAA is essentially the Olympic Committee and or FIFA light. If they had the global overreach that those two entities do, trust me, it would be a bigger story. But the NCAA is not an institution that is built on trust and transparency, period. And I'm being as nice as possible right now, just so, don't get too much hate. But it is a very, let's just say, sketchy organization. And you can go look through the time. So I think overall they need to get out from underneath the NCAA and maybe embrace club sports. If you want, we see it in certain sports. It used to be ultimate frisbee. This was like back when I was in high school, and I'm not going to say how long ago that was, but ultimate frisbee was kind of that club, excuse me, that club sport at the NCAA level that wasn't officially sanctioned, but you had certain, things. And even more notably, this past, I don't know if it was this season or last season, I believe it was Arizona State's club team, or anyway, a club ice hockey team actually took down the number one, like, Division One, the Denver. I think it was Denver. I think they were number one. They were definitely defending champs. I believe they're going for a second, maybe this weekend. I'm not sure, but anyways, so club is just kind of a way. It's essentially intramurals and things like that. A lot less overreach from the NCAA. Again, that is not an easy hurdle or rock to get out from underneath. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend that all you got to do is snap your finger and everything goes back to normal, and everything's hunky dory. Now, I do have a couple, thoughts if for whatever reason, or I shouldn't even say if, but when, the NCAA they're not going to get away from that. I really do think contracts are going to be needed when it comes to NIL for certain situations. Now, a lot of what, American sports fans focus on at the collegiate level are two sports, basketball and football. Obviously, baseball, hockey, and, track and field, and, they're there. But you don't have New Year's Day where, okay, if you're a football fan, you got wall to wall college football, March Madness. You don't have that for the other sports. So the two big ones, and financially, football and basketball carry pretty much every other sport financially, at, the D1 level, and probably even down further just at lower levels in terms of the money that's being brought in the lower divisions. Um, so, maybe if you put like a threshold on, okay, if an NIL deal is signed, but if it's over 50,000, then contracts are going to need to be negotiated. And the reason I bring that up, and now this is kind of the moment for me to kind of show my impartiality, because while the NCAA losing out on money is not something I'm going to lose sleep over, I also don't think it's right for kids to transfer to a school, get an NIL check of $1 million, and play for, let's say, 2 or 3, 4 games, and then go, you know what, maybe I'll take a red shirt and see if I can hit the bank again. And someone will probably pay them. Now the school is out $1 million, which in the grand scheme of things isn't terrible, but that's $1 million that they just lost, but they still need to essentially replace that player. And I do think when contracts become a part of it, now you're going to be talking about players unions. Trust me, there is not an easy way to split this baby. There never is. But this is a very messy situation. So a lot of the suggestions I'm throwing out there, trust me, I know there are a lot of flaws in this plan. I just don't know how to get through that, because what's working right now, or what is happening right now, isn't working in my mind. And I really do think if it continues over the long term, it is going to affect the schools and the sport overall. And that is what I worry about. Um, the ability for March Madness to be madness. And I really do think this was just one year. And, just 2 years ago, we had the craziest tournament ever, with San Diego State, Florida Atlantic, and Miami of Florida all making the Final Four. Excuse me. So it's kind of maybe a get back to things, but I do wonder if, we have another tournament next year where all 4 number 1 seeds are in it, and we don't really have competitive basketball. That's going to lose interest. Now, the other thing I did want to, kind of one idea I had was maybe, and this is another one that's very kind of, I don't know how or why or how we can get her done, but instead of doing years of eligibility, why not maybe an age limit? Whether it's 23 or 24, if you want give yourself essentially 1 year opportunity to get a medical red shirt and 1 year opportunity to just essentially not play. You still have 4 years, assuming you're going into college at 18. Now again, I do know there are backsides of this, because there are certain members of our military that who knows, they're going to go give 4 years and for our country, which is amazing and should be absolutely celebrated. But when they come back, then what? They don't really have any eligibility. And then on the other side, I'm looking at BYU. I believe it's a 1 or 2 year mission they have to go on before they can even play on the team. So again, that's going to hurt them. But there needs to be, because we do have a situation where, some of these kids are coming back for, Cam Rising in football is another example, and, really unfortunate with his injuries, but coming back for your 8th or 9th year, like, I'm sorry, Cam, like, I apologize that you hurt yourself and you missed 3 seasons for a season-ending injury, but you got to leave. Like, it's time to go. You graduated 4 years ago. You can't keep playing here, or we go to club again. Like, there's ways out of it, but goodness, they are very, very sticky and messy. And the question then becomes, the entities that are able to make these changes, do they want to do the actual heavy lifting that is necessary? I don't think they do. I'll be honest, it's unfortunate. But I am a very pessimistic person. I prefer to refer to myself as a realistic person, but I will listen to people who say I am pessimistic. So, and then the last thing I do want to kind of maybe throw out there, and I would assume this is, I'll put it in air quotes, the easiest hurdle to clear. And I do think it's the timing of the opening of the transfer portals. Again, I mentioned it to where I think December 21st is the football transfer portal, or the winter sport transfer portal to get you ready, or no, I'm sorry, the fall to get you ready for the winter. And then I think April or March 20th might be is the cutoff for fall to spring uh signups for school, so you can get your classes and things like that. So there is a rhyme to the reason why the dates are the way they are. However, I think in this world where 80% of school is online, um, we have players that have graduated. I bring up Cam Rising again. They're not going to the school, but they still technically have years of eligibility. Like, I feel like we're splitting hairs in this situation when it could be very easily remedied, when we're looking at others and just saying, with a magic wand going, yeah, sure, that works. Like, why can't we just wave that magic wand for these over here that would help a lot more people and programs going forward? So again, the biggest thing, and I didn't expect to have to kind of vamp like this. I don't know if we're going to be getting Raider Jim back. Haven't heard from him, and I don't want to stop the pod to text. So we'll hopefully get him back next week. He might actually be taking that computer out to the field as we speak, literally. But I think my kind of in conclusion for this long-winded how to fix college, sports with the NIL transfer portal and things like that. The NCAA either needs to get on board and become a helpful partner in this problem solving conversation, or they need to get the bleep out of the way. Because college sports, notably college football and college basketball, are some things that I enjoy on a sporting level, probably more than I would put it in my top 5, definitely. I mean, I love baseball, Major League Baseball. I love the NFL, but there is nothing better than a Saturday morning in October, November, knowing if you got nothing to do, there is football everywhere, everywhere. Especially with these days in streaming, it's not even just D1 anymore. And then So for me, and then obviously the Thursday and Friday, that first time of the tournament, where you see everything in front of you and you just know I'm going to get some great basketball. I don't want to lose those things. And I do feel like we might be heading down that route possibly, but again, I feel like there's a lot of track to go down before we go off the cliff. If someone could just maybe start putting some plans together to maybe build that bridge to get us over this. But again, I don't know if the NCAA wants to build that bridge, and that is the problem.